For almost all of human history, there were no cities, no kings, no taxes. Freedom often looked like the ability to pick up and walk away. Uncovering the birth of human civilization, what really happened behind the scenes, begins with that paradox. A surprisingly recent tethering of people to place and a chain of material changes that made power permanent. If you want more deep history reveals, like and subscribe. Imagine a small band moving across a landscape about 12,000 years ago. They know every bend of the river, every patch of wild grains, the rhythm of migratory herds. Their shelters are light, their tools portable. Meals are varied, meat one week, roots and wild fruits the next. When a season fails, the group picks up what they can carry and goes to a different valley. Archaeology paints this picture with simple traces. Scattered hearths, flaked stone tools, campsites rather than houses. Mobility is the ultimate safety valve. Leaving reduces the need for fixed property or coercive claims over land. Then the world shifts. At the end of the Ice Age, climate patterns change and ecosystems reorganize. In places like the Fertile Crescent, predictable stands of wild wheat and barley become abundant. Along certain rivers, the Nile, the Tigris and Euphrates, the Indus, the Yellow River, seasonal floods and dependable water sources create opportunities to stay put. Around 2800 BC, some groups began to test sedentism. The archaeological signs are quiet but telling. Stone foundations that suggest houses, heavy grinding stones that could not be carried, and dug subsurface pits used as silos for storing grain. These objects tether people to particular places. They are not dramatic single inventions. They are physical commitments. But commitment carries a cost. Storage turned food into a target. A dug pit full of grain changes how neighbors and strangers see a settlement. It also creates a new problem: how to protect and allocate that stored surplus. Walls appear in the record, Jericho's successive ramparts one of the earliest clear examples, suggesting defense against people and perhaps animal pests. The bones tell the story. Skeletal remains from early villages show a shift in health and workload. People become shorter on average. Dental cavities increase as starch replaces a diverse forage diet. Repetitive stress markers on spines, hips and knees indicate long hours bent over grinding or tilling. Isotope analysis of bones suggests diets became narrower. Farming produced more calories per hectare, but life for many became harder and less varied. The turning point is not a heroic decision to improve humanity. It is a constrained choice under pressure. As populations in some regions grew, and as environmental fluctuations made mobility less reliable, groups faced options they may not have preferred. Abandon the growing local stock of food, shrink their group, or find ways to control the land. Control meant planting, selective harvesting, and eventually irrigation, deliberately moving water to fields. Irrigation is a different order of commitment. A simple channel ties a community to river management. Large canals require coordinated labor on a scale a scattered band cannot muster. Coordination begins informally. Shared digging, seasonal pooling of labor, but it tends to favor those who can organize and keep track of contributions. With coordinated projects came new forms of vulnerability and new administrative needs. Storage and irrigation made food predictable, but also made it something to manage. Clay bowls and simple tokens found in many early sites, and later clay tablets in southern Mesopotamia around 3800 BC, are not art. They are records, counts of rations, lists of workers, promises of delivery. Writing emerges first as an administrative technology. It helps run granaries, allocate labor, and adjudicate claims. Administrative records make dependence visible. When a household's portion is registered, when rations are distributed, when labor is requisitioned for a canal, the social web tightens. The people who oversee these flows increasingly acquire lasting authority. Temporary leaders can become permanent office holders when institutional responsibilities outlive any single season. This cascade, storage to vulnerability, irrigation to coordination, bookkeeping to administrative power, also creates incentives for coercion. A settled community with valuable stores needs defense. It also needs people to maintain canals and granaries. That combination makes both theft and exploitation more likely. The archaeological and osteological evidence indicates increased violence in many regions. Healed cranial fractures, fortifications, and population clustering suggest that conflict over resources becomes part of life. Labor specialization and inequality follow suit. Some individuals become administrators, priests, or managers. Others become regular laborers whose lives are shaped by the cycle of planting, tending, and harvest. Slavery or servile labor appears in later records in some places, though its forms and extent vary widely by region. None of this is a straight line from hunter-gatherer bliss to urban tyranny. Parallel processes occurred in different rivers and valleys. The Nile's rhythms produced a state different from southern Mesopotamia's irrigation empires. The Indus cities had distinctive administrative arrangements. The Yellow River communities followed their own path. The evidence suggests a complex mix of causes: climate shifts, population dynamics, local resource distributions, and cultural choices all contributed to the emergence of towns and states. Still, a recurring mechanism is clear. Material commitments, houses, silos, dams, created dependencies that rewarded coordination and record-keeping, and these in turn favored the creation of permanent structures of power. The human cost deserves emphasis. Osteological markers of health decline, the ubiquity of heavy grinding stones in domestic contexts, the architectural investments in walls and canals, these are concrete traces of trade-offs. People who once enjoyed dietary diversity and mobility now spent more hours in repetitive tasks and consumed diets higher in starch. They bore the physical signatures of that life. At the same time, the new systems enabled population densities and cultural complexity previously impossible. Cities, specialized crafts, monumental architecture, and new forms of knowledge. That is the nuance. Agriculture and urban life created possibilities and burdens in equal measure. So when we say we are uncovering the birth of human civilization, we mean uncovering a pattern of unintended systemic consequences. Civilization wasn't planned, it was the price of stopping. Behind the scenes were silos and grinding stones, canals and clay tokens, worn joints and fortified walls. Material realities that nudge societies into permanent organization and unequal power. That is the sobering reveal. The rise of states was less a single grand invention than an emergent response to constraint, with both creative and costly outcomes. What does this mean for us today? The answer is not a moral verdict. It is an invitation to recognize how material choices create social structures, and how those structures persist long after the original pressures change. If this behind-the-scenes detective work interests you, share a thought in the comments. What surprise from our deep past do you find most striking? And subscribe for more investigations into the hidden forces that shaped human history.